Well, I'm joined with Mr. Merle Bowes today at Lime Kiln Farms in beautiful Lanark County. Merle's been an organic grower for many years, and want to talk a little bit about how Merle sees COVID and what's been happening and what thoughts you might have. One of the things that I wanted to talk with Merle about is, and I've known Merle and Ruth for a long time, and I've always well regarded his thoughts and his advice, but also wanted to talk about how COVID is impacting our freedoms, and what some thoughts are from Lime Kiln Farms and the sawmill at Lime Kiln Farms today. Yeah. So what? Maybe just start off, Merle. What do you think of how our society has responded to COVID?
Well, I think it's absolutely ridiculous the way we've responded to COVID. And this lack of freedoms that you speak of, and removal of freedoms is dangerous and scary. I'm totally fed up with that whole concept of what's happening in the Western world over COVID. Yeah. Because now we've got to the point where COVID is far more, where the restrictions are far more damaging than COVID.
Yeah.
You know, another thing that really bothers me about this, Randy, right from the start, are the inconsistencies in moves by government, bureaucracy, agencies of government. It was obvious they were doing things without knowing what they were doing at the start, certainly. But the inconsistencies, in one place I run into an obvious inconsistency is the way we're being treated at farmers markets in Ontario.
Right. Well, that was a good example of the contradictions and the irrational conditions. I know well on that because for those who don't know, Merle and many farmers around here bring their produce to the Carleton Place Farmers Market every Saturday. And back in May, as things were developing to easing up a little bit, and there was discussion about opening the farmers markets, the local public health unit came out with these extraordinary and ridiculous conditions that they were attempting to impose.
Well, it made it absolutely impossible to have a farmers market.
Yeah. Well, and in a actual, other than the Carleton Place farmers markets, I believe all the farmers markets in the area, well, they didn't fight back.
Right.
The Carleton Place farmers market did fight back and did open in May, but from what I understand, the Perth farmers market only opened 2 weeks ago. And most markets remain closed through all this. And just to set the context, you know, through all this, it was, you were okay to go to Walmart or go to Costco or to go to Sobeys or whatever.
And touch food if you so chose to do so in produce sections.
And without a mask. And,
without a mask,
and through the height of the fatalities, through the height of... we could always go to a big box store. We could always touch and feel their produce. We could do it without a mask. And the rates continued to drop. But with the farmers markets, some of the conditions...
Who were deemed to be an essential...
I think that word has been distorted in its meaning by this government. But, you know, I think, you know, if we change that word from essential to expendable, it's a more accurate reflection of what government thought of people. But for those who aren't aware, at the farmers markets, the health unit said, first off, you can't accept cash.
Right.
That was number one.
Yeah.
The second condition to open the farmers markets was people had to phone or internet in their orders. You could not...
Pre-order.
Yeah, it had to be a pre-order. The most outrageous one was that the consumers who wanted to go pick up their produce at the farmers markets would not have been allowed to leave their cars.
Right, it was a drive-through.
It was a drive-through farmers markets. So Merle was expected to pick out the onions, pick out the radishes, pick out the spinach, whatever it was, and bring them to the car, and I guess also have a remote terminal so you could accept an electronic transaction.
Yeah.
But the important thing here is, in my view, is all those irrational and contradictory conditions that the health unit attempted to impose on the Carleton Place farmers markets were all rescinded. They didn't get imposed because people at the farmers markets fought back.
Yeah.
They stood up and they said, these conditions are stupid, they're impractical, and they're contradictory.
Yeah.
And
in a case of double standards again.
Oh, absolutely double standards. But this point requires emphasis. These were conditions being imposed by the experts.
Yeah.
By the experts.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-called, I would prefer to use a little bit different terminology. I would say so-called experts.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people with a lot of sense that aren't considered experts, and they don't work for the health unit.
Yeah. I
believe that after doing this kind of stuff for all these years, that I'm somewhat of an expert in dealing with consumers and customers and produce, and I've never made anyone sick yet, and I have no intention of doing so.